The Opel Kapitän, also sometimes called Kapitän 48, produced between 1948 and 1951, was an important model in Opel's lineup during the post-war era, as it was one of the first post-war models made by Opel. This period marked the reintroduction of the Kapitän after World War II, with production resuming in 1948. It was a revolutionary car, not because it was completely new, because it mostly was based on the pre-war Kapitän. However, it was revolutionary because it was one of the first models to reintroduce bigger engines in vehicles for the civilian market. In this video we are going to be talking about the second generation Opel Kapitän, very similar to the first generation pre-war Opel Kapitän. The second generation Kapitän was initially introduced in October 1948 and could be segmented into two timelines, the 1948 to 1950 Kapitän 48 and the 1950 to 1951 Opel Kapitän 50, introduced in 1950 and therefore called 1950 or 50. The 1948 to 1950 Kapitän was the first post-war model made by Opel in this luxury lineup. Sadly, at the moment Opel discontinued the more luxurious Admiral as it was produced up until 1939, but decided to expand its lineup by introducing the Kapitän in 1948, 8 years after the pre-war generation was discontinued because of the war. Around 1.5 years later, after the introduction of this generation, in May 1950, Opel introduced an updated version known as the Kapitän 50, which continued production until 1951. However, this so-called facelift mostly included updates to the interior, no major updates done to the exterior. Therefore, the Kapitän 50 is mostly seen as a car within the same generation as the Kapitän 48. Now I might hear you say, why was the introduction almost 3.5 years after the war in Europe ended in May 1945? That was because, most importantly, Opel's factory mostly was bombed and destroyed and therefore couldn't produce a lot of vehicles. Besides this, there also was a lot of sanctions given by the Allies to Germany, one of which was the restriction not to build or use engines bigger than 1.5 liters in civilian cars, if I'm correct. In the aftermath of World War II, Germany faced a period of profound reconstruction and re-evaluation. Among the industries deeply impacted by the war was automobile manufacturing, where Opel, a brand synonymous with German engineering, found itself grappling with harsh restrictions imposed by the Allied occupation. For Opel, these constraints went beyond physical damage to its factories. They extended to what the company could design and produce, particularly in terms of engine sizes. By the late 1940s and early 1950s, as Germany's economy began to recover and restrictions were gradually lifted, Opel was able to revisit its ambitions of building larger, more powerful engines and more luxurious models. The easing of regulations allowed the company to reintroduce models with 6-cylinder engines, signaling a return to the engineering excellence for which it was known. Now quickly back to the Kapitän. The Kapitän was equipped with the same 2.5-liter inline 6 producing 55 horsepower, just like the pre-war Kapitän and even the Opel Super 6. The only difference was a slight increase in torque from 139 to 142 Nm. This engine allowed the car to reach the same top speed of 126 km/h and had the same acceleration from 0 to 100 of 29 seconds. And also the transmission didn't change, as the car featured the same 3-speed manual. For the Kapitän 50, the compression of the 2.5-liter engine was slightly increased from 6.0 to 1 to 6.1 to 1. However, this didn't give the car any more power. The Kapitän showcased a streamlined design with smooth lines and a prominent front grille, embodying the automobile aesthetics of the late 1940s and early 1950s, although the design also was of the 1930s as well, because the car was based on the 1938 to 1940 Opel Kapitän. It still had some differences, such as the indicators on the front side, and the body was constructed just like the pre-war Kapitän as well, using a unitary design which still was innovative for its time and contributed to the vehicle's structural integrity. Inside, just like the pre-war Kapitän, the 1948 to 1950 Kapitän offered a spacious cabin with seating up to 5 or 6 people, thanks to its front and rear bench seats. The interior was designed with comfort in mind, featuring quality materials and straightforward dashboard layout with easily accessible controls. The Kapitän 50 received a number of changes and improvements. The most obvious feature is the newly introduced steering wheel gear shift, called remote control, a new dashboard like that of the later Kapitän 51, and newly designed interior panels and upholstery fabrics, or the stripes. During its production years, the Opel Kapitän faced competition from several models in the European market. However, I found one car in particular a very good competitor, the Citroën C11. With the 1.9 liter inline-4 engine produced between 1934 and 1957, being the predecessor of the Citroën DS, somewhat offering similar specifications to the Kapitän, but it was a little bit smaller at 4 meters and 45 centimeters. It was also considered a quite luxurious vehicle. It had 55 horsepower, a 0 to 100 time of 30.2 seconds and had a top speed of 118 km an hour, making the car quite similar in specification wise to the Kapitän. The second generation Opel Kapitän was produced up until February 1951, with the total production span being around 2 years and 4 months, with the third improved generation being introduced the following month, in March 1951. Despite the hard time Germany was going through after World War, the model was quite popular in the German market during the early post-war years, contributing significantly to Opel's recovery and success in the automotive industry during that period. Production-wise, as said before, the Kapitän was a great success, in my opinion, as the Kapitän 48 was produced 266 times in the 3 months of 1948 as it was introduced in October that year. It was produced 7,820 times in 1949 and 4,850 times in 1950. The facelift of 1950, called the Kapitän 50, was made besides the Kapitän 48 in the 1950 model year and was produced an astonishing 13,799 times in 1950 and 3,671 times in the first 2 months of 1951, because the Kapitän's third generation was introduced in March 1951. The pre-war Opel Kapitän produced from 1938 to 1940 served as the predecessor to the 1948 model. The post-1951 models saw further developments, with the Kapitän series continuing until 1970, eventually being succeeded by the Opel Diplomat or Admiral in Opel's luxury lineup. But up until 1970 there are a lot of different Kapitän models to talk about, so keep in touch if you're interested to see more about these models. Thanks for watching this video. To be able to upload more videos in the future, please consider becoming a member on my channel or sending a super thanks on this video. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Don't forget to check out this playlist with many interesting videos covering various parts of the automotive industry, and I will see you in the next video.